But this is like the Olympic level mental gymnastics they have to do to convince themselves. Because again, they believe that they're actually doing something healthy for themselves. I am simply saying you would be even more healthy if you also included fiber in that. Really people who are getting positive benefits are the ones that are the loudest.
Why are so many experts getting upset about the carnivore diet? Hi, I'm Dr. Eric Westman, and welcome back to my channel where I review and debunk nutritional misinformation online. In this video called "No One Would Try the Carnivore Diet If They Knew This," we're going to hear some people talk about some of the common concerns and criticisms of the carnivore diet and whether they're legitimate or not. Wait till the end to see my final thought. I'd like to give a big thank you to our friends at Element for sponsoring today's video. Element offers a fantastic science-backed mix of sodium, potassium, and magnesium, essential electrolytes for anyone on a keto diet. In particular, their raw, unflavored version, which comes in the blue, teal-colored package, is a great choice. This specific version contains no stevia, no sugar, or any additives, just the 3 vital electrolytes your body needs, already perfectly measured for you. It's an excellent addition to a keto diet, and more importantly, it tastes great. As you may know, electrolytes play a crucial role, especially for those following a keto or carnivore lifestyle. Element is giving you the chance to try it out with a free sample pack included in any purchase. That means you'll receive 8 single-serving packets at no extra cost with your order. It's a perfect way to test it out and even share Element with a friend. Get yours now at drinkelement.com/Eric Westman. This special offer is only available through my link, drinkelement.com/Eric Westman. You'll also find it in the description below. Now let's get back to the video.
There's clearly a lot of people that experience benefits from going on a carnivore diet, an all-meat diet. I also hear them say things like plants are bad for you. You mentioned that. Fiber is bad for you.
Paper.
Interesting. I'm trying to figure out where that's coming from. But, what's your take on it? Like in terms of, why are they're experiencing the benefits? You kind of talked a little bit about it. Why they're experiencing some of these benefits. Like autoimmune disease is the big one, right? Their autoimmune issues kind of resolved. But like long term for some people.
Well, so I have to echo those observations that a lot of people get improvements with a carnivore diet, and there are a lot of reasons why that might be true. And a carnivore diet can be defined in many different ways. Basically, you're eating animal products, not plant products, and the extreme to which you go to avoid animal and dairy and even coffee and tea depends on what version of a carnivore diet you're doing. But so in this case, the expert being interviewed is Dr. Layne Norton. He is he's a PhD scientist who I think works with Don Layman, who I've known for years, who is a protein expert. But there was reference to his not going along with the seed oil stuff being bad or being as bad as it is. I have to agree that I don't think the seed oil is as bad as everyone says it is, at least in the amount you get on a low carb diet. I don't even mention that you should restrict seed oils in the way I teach it. But so Dr. Norton is a evidence-based purist, kind of, go by the book, look at the study. If it's not in the study, it doesn't exist. So let's hear what he says about the carnivore diet.
I think I saw some physician doctor saying there's 76 known carcinogens in plants. And I'm like, if you extracted like the chemical composition out and like overfed them in high doses, maybe. Okay. But what actually happens when people eat plants? Like if plants are trying to kill us, they're doing a really crappy job. Like they are failing miserably because people eat more plants tend to live longer. And so, okay, why are we not applying that towards compounds in meat? Heterocyclic amines, heme iron, polyaromatic hydrocarbons, NUE5GC. And when you bring that up, they go, carnivore, I was debating, well, that's just hormesis. I'm like, well, how convenient that the compounds that might be carcinogenic are hormetic for the stuff you like. but the stuff you don't like to eat is toxic. I'm like, but this is like the Olympic level mental gymnastics they have to do to convince themselves. Because again, they believe that they're actually doing something healthy for themselves. Now, I want to be very clear.
Well, so hang on. Certainly people are, in fact, he called someone who is promoting a carnivore diet a carnivore. I mean, it's someone who follows a carnivore diet, but there are people who self-identify as vegan when they're following a vegan diet. Or I don't know if you call yourself a Mediterranean, if you're following a Mediterranean diet. So anyway, I like that idea that there are compounds in all foods that can be cancerous, and the calling out of one and not the other based on where it comes from. Yeah, that's a problem that I'm not sure that means a carnivore diet is bad. And now he's getting into the idea that these people are thinking they're doing something good. Someone who does a carnivore diet and reverses their diabetes or fixes their autoimmune problem, that's something really good. I'm going to point out that Dr. Norton is not an MD, and so he's waiting for science to catch up with what is happening in the real world. And a grassroots movement like low carb or Atkins that I followed now for the last 25 years since I was starting to research the Atkins diet started as grassroots, and everyone was against it. And so I think there are a lot of similarities about, because it's something different than before, it's got to be bad, which is not good logic either. But anyway, this equal balanced logic, I think it's a reasonable criticism.
Some people do carnivore and they get healthier. I'm not saying that can't happen. I am simply saying you would be even more healthy if you also included fiber in that.
Where's the data for this?
If you also included fruits and vegetables. Now,
where's the data for that?
I think a lot of these people are people with undiagnosed IBS, people with gut issues, digestive issues, and what is carnivore? It is an elimination diet. And so what happens when people who have gut and autoimmune disorders go on elimination diets? A lot of times they feel better. Okay, but an elimination diet is meant so that you can then add back things and see what you tolerate versus not tolerate.
So that's just a very interesting observation. Really, do you have to add back foods that have been harming you for a long time? So it's a very curious thing that Dr. Norton has taught for a long time and teaches on lots of topics, including nutrition. And yet I see that there's sort of a dogma position or power position that people seem to be in, where if it's different, it has to be bad. And eventually, if you do an elimination diet and it eliminates your disease, well, then go back to eat the way that gave you the disease. Makes no sense to me at all. And I have to imagine that he's not sat down one-on-one with someone who's reversed their diabetes, who's had it for 20 years and reversed it, and then to say to their face that you're killing yourself. I mean, there's a cartoon from 25 years ago. It was about the Atkins diet. There was a cartoon with a physician, a doctor, scolding the patient who said, the doctor says you reversed your diabetes, you lost 100 pounds, reversed your hypertension, and you no longer have any joint pains. But I tell you, that diet's going to kill you. How could you be so arrogant? Well, if you're not in the trenches seeing this happen, I can understand that.
Many people, FODMAP sensitivities. Many people have FODMAP sensitivities, aren't even aware of it. So they cut out fruits and vegetables, which can be high in FODMAPs.
So FODMAPs are the simple sugars. Fructose, oligose, the acronym is for the simple sugars. What's fascinating is the GI doctors who have studied diet have never really studied an Atkins type restriction diet, elimination diet, carnivore diet for the GI issues. They haven't. So they have kind of nibbled at the edge. The FODMAP is basically eliminating simple sugars. When you look at the results of IBS improvement, it improves things, but it doesn't eliminate it. So what he's talking about here is a diet that doctors find familiar, but it's really not as powerful as a carnivore diet. But because there's research published about it, that's in his world. As someone as someone who really does a good job of reading science, that's necessarily going to be reactive or after the fact when there's a grassroots movement where people are doing it and seeing results now.
They feel better. Okay, so then start adding them in one by one and see what you tolerate.
I disagree. If you got rid of FODMAPs, the simple sugars, and your disease is gone, don't add them back. I don't understand that logic. I think it's, again, from studies of people who eat carbs who are healthy, they can eat carbs. If carbs cause a problem and you take away the carb, don't add them back if you're better and you feel fine and you enjoy the way that your quality of life is. So I don't understand this. I think it's because he's not a physician in the trenches seeing and talking to people who are having these results.
And I think the other thing to point out is there is a lot of selection bias that goes on here, which is if you look at these carnivore groups, because I've been in them, because I watch, they're really people who are getting positive benefits are the ones that are the loudest. And the people who don't, they get like gaslit, bullied. They get accused of like sneaking in carbohydrates or plants. And the response is always, well, just add more fats, add more animal fats, if they're having problems with constipation or whatever it is. And it's funny, I was on a debate with Paul Saladino on Mark Bell's podcast years ago. And I think I actually came across poorly on that podcast because one, I wasn't super familiar with his entire position, and I was so flabbergasted by it. It took me like an hour to just recover and like get my wits back about me. And he pulled up his postulation at the time was fiber is toilet paper. Your body doesn't digest it. Like, why would you put that in you? Well, fiber isn't just like toilet paper. Like there's this thing called soluble fermentable fiber that actually is the main fuel for the gut microbiome. And of all the things we know that actually help with the gut microbiome, that's like the biggest lever is fermentable, soluble fiber. And that produces things like butyrate, propionate, which have positive metabolic health benefits in many randomized control trials. So that's one.
Well, so that's concern number one. People are aggressive about saying how great they're doing on internet sites. So that's a concern he has. I don't know why that people who are getting harmed don't do well are not getting ostracized, or they're getting ostracized. They're not getting fair attention on a group that's promoting an approach. I mean, that happens on any kind of narrow kind of group. Like if you're on a vegan site, you're a troll if you come on and you are anti-vegan. So I don't think that's a concern. To me, it would be a concern if people are getting harmed by the approach and they're being like shoved under the carpet. So I don't see that happening. The other concern about fiber, and the gut microbiome, oh my goodness, the gut microbiome is complicated. And we're in a situation where the current state of carb eaters, their microbiome is considered to be normal or optimal. And so if you have a difference from what carb eaters are eating, this could be blood work, this could be microbiome, suddenly it's bad. Suddenly it's, so what he's talking about now and what they're going to talk about fiber, I think is just kind of missing the main point that the evidence for fiber is not as solid as they're saying. We'll get to that.
But he pulls out this study that I'd never heard of before. And it was a study where people who had constipation eliminated fiber, and a lot of them reported improvement in their symptoms. So it's self-reported and there's no control group. I'm like, okay, but the meta-analyses show overall that fiber helps with like going to the bathroom, with pooping, like it helps.
And so the idea that these are carb eaters and the studies on fiber are among carb eaters and it helps you poop, okay. That's not a outcome of cancer or heart disease or something. Let's say you reversed your type 2 diabetes and had all these other health benefits. You can handle the constipation or not pooping by something simple, and the risks and benefits is you'd want to do the approach that has a side effect. I mean, good Lord, we have so many medicines that have side effects. To have a little side effect with a dietary approach, to me as a physician, is something you just manage.
Okay, maybe some people feel better by eliminating it, right? Okay, I can see a place for that. But again, it's not that carnivore has this magic. It's that you're taking things out of your diet that were probably aggravating you. They were aggravating your digestion, producing excess gas. You were having pain, bloating.
Messing up your microbiome.
And again, this is another one where people go, I was very inflamed. I'm like, yeah, what was your CRP? What was it? What's that? I'm like, well, that's what you use to measure inflammation. Well, my gut hurt. I was bloated. No. That is localized inflammation in response to something going on there. That is not the same thing as the inflammation that raises the risk of heart disease and cancer and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so that was an interesting comment that so people can feel inflamed, and it's not a blood test marker that is always that goes along with it. So that, again, that's I think a difference of someone who's reading papers and assuming that blood tests are perfect, which they're not. And when someone says they're inflamed, it doesn't really mean that they think they have high inflammatory CRPs. It's a language thing about I just feel bad.
So what I would say to people is, hey, if you want to eat like a meat-based diet, I still don't think it's a great idea, but like you don't have to have like 4 ribeyes a day. You can choose leaner cuts of meat. You can have fish, and why not work in some fruits and vegetables?
Well, I was with him until he said work in fruits and vegetables. Because if they gave you a medical issue that doctors couldn't fix, you wouldn't want to add them back. So, but it's interesting that he's now even toggling back to lean cuts of meat. That I thought he wasn't afraid of saturated fat. He shouldn't be in terms of a total health picture. Those studies by the scientists have been out for many years saying saturated fat is not a problem for heart disease. That was kind of an interesting thing. Again, he's trying to push back fruits and vegetables for people who are intolerant to them. I don't get that.
And if you have digestive problems with those, add them in one at a time and see which one doesn't give you digestive distress. And I think, unfortunately, this becomes so much like a religion for people because they just, I think a lot of them don't like eating vegetables. And so it becomes an excuse to not eat vegetables. We believe what we want to believe. And again, the asymmetrical application of logic is very interesting to me. So there's a lot of carnivore advocates out there that say epidemiology is garbage. In fact, Paul Saladino had a video titled Epidemiology is Garbage. Like, okay. And then when he was on another podcast, he was citing epidemiology. And I'm like, wait. So epidemiology is garbage unless it's epidemiology that you agree with.
Well, I agree with Dr. Norton here that epidemiology is hypothesis generating. If he's talking specifically about nutritional epidemiology, I share Dr. Saladino's concerns about it. And the Harvard group, which had the really only big trials over time, observational studies over time, epidemiology has now been balanced by the McMaster Pure study, which is nutritional epidemiology, and they're not finding the same things. And I share that concern of it. Do 2 epidemiology studies that conflict mean that there's controversy? Is one better than another? I think they're both hypothesis generating, which means you have to turn these ideas around and prospectively study them in experiments. I totally agree with Dr. Norton on this one.
But he's not alone in that. There's a lot of people who did that. And then here comes this like internet survey that was published by Harvard about people, I think it was in Harvard, but it was like a self-reported internet survey of people like reporting like certain things improving on carnivore diet. I'm like, wait, so 20-year cohort studies with appropriate covariates are garbage, but a self-reported internet survey, that's high quality evidence. Okay.
Yeah, he has a good point, but there are different kinds of studies that have different purposes, and it's like comparing apples and oranges. I doubt that there's anyone who is kept in the epidemiology study if they self-describe just eating a carnivore diet. So they'd be seen as an outlier, thrown out perhaps. And the survey, actually it was the Harvard group, David Ludwig and his group, did a survey with people who said they were doing carnivore diets and had lab work and all. And obviously it's just a start, but I think we're better off having that survey around. And is it the best study? No, Is it a study? Yes. Is it as good as nutritional epidemiology? Yeah, I think so. It's getting us thinking in this way. But again, he's outside of the clinical realm here, trying to compare two different sorts of research that are not good enough. And I don't know that anyone is saying that study proves anything other than, hey, have an open mind, and there are a lot of people doing that.
I mean, again, it's like if you're going to apply a certain type of logic, you have to be consistent with that. And again, what I'll say is, hey, I just laid out how I don't think red meat is an independent risk factor for cancer. I'm not convinced about that. I'm very unconvinced about that.
Me too. I agree with him on that one.
But if red meat had the data that dietary fiber had about reducing the risk of cancer, heart disease, and mortality, you carnivores would lose your absolute minds if anybody dared suggest that it wasn't good for you. And so it just very clearly points out the asymmetrical application of logic. And getting more into dietary fiber, it fulfills almost every single aspect of what I need to be considered strong evidence, which is we know the mechanisms, in terms of insoluble fiber, decreases gut transit time, decreases the risk of diverticulitis, which probably is a risk factor for developing colon cancer at some point. There's some idea that by having less gut transit time, that the toxins that are in our digesta that wind up in stool, that they have less time to interact with those intestinal cells. And so by getting rid of it faster, that reduces your risk of colorectal cancer. Soluble fiber, the effects on the gut microbiome, the production of short-chain fatty acids, and also the lowering of LDL cholesterol. So we have those, and improvement in glucose metabolism and insulin sensitivity. We have those mechanisms.
Not to mention the micronutrients, vitamins and minerals, and
that are co-ingested along with that
in those plants and fruits. Yeah,
in the food matrix. And that.
So I'm not as convinced about fiber as he is. And when I look at Cochrane reviews, these are high-level evidence that physicians look at. If I look at the data on fiber, it's not at the level of what you would expect for drug approval, for example, at FDA. There are not randomized trials saying that having more fiber reduces colorectal cancer. And the meta-analysis they show is actually observational research, so that they're summarizing observational research. So I'm not sure why I think they're pushing fiber as the mechanism to get you to eat more fruits and vegetables, which again is not really proven to be necessary in the context of a low carb diet. And that's where the fallacy of all of this is, where it's assumed that if it's good for people who eat carbs, it must be good for those who don't eat carbs, those who maybe have a different metabolism. And then when he brings in the LDL, that's showing me that he's certainly in the old paradigm view of how you look at metabolism and what risk factors are. And I'm not convinced fiber is necessary, other than it might make you have better bowel movements, but you certainly have more bowel movement if you have more fiber, and that's a microbiome thing that feeds the microbiome. You have more stool. Just about everyone notices they have less bowel movement, less stool volume and amount when they don't eat the vegetables. So it's a different type of metabolism, and just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong or bad.
Things. The question is, what is the overall outcome of that, right? Like we said, aspirin activates procoagulant, anticoagulant pathways, but the overall effect is anticoagulation. Plants, fruits and vegetables. So both, any food may activate positive and negative pathways, but the question is, like, what's the overall effect, right? Because if we try to tease apart every individual biochemical pathway, it's going to be really hard to wrap that back together. And again, with fiber, there's also a dose response. We see a dose response in these cohort studies. And again, if we do a forest plot of studies showing benefit or showing harm, literally every single study is on the side of benefit.
Cohort studies. These are not randomized controlled trial. Cohort studies are observational studies. They're hypothesis generating. And it's a bit odd that Dr. Norton, who I laugh because I was called out as, Mr. Randomized Controlled Trial when I was in training years ago, and because those are the hypothesis testing kinds of studies, and they flipped up the meta-analysis of cohort studies on fiber. No, there aren't randomized trials. I'm I'm not convinced about fiber, and even then, under a different metabolic circumstance of ketosis and nutritional ketosis, a lot of this discussion could be changed into what are the benefits of nutritional ketosis, the anti-inflammatory side of it. But I like that he is calling out that a carnivore diet has a lot of benefit because it's eliminating factors that are irritants. And I don't really agree with the fact that you have to add them back in. I mean, do you? I mean, let me know in your comments below.
So I just don't know how much more data you need. Just because some sources of fiber might make your tummy hurt doesn't mean fiber is bad for you. I don't know how else I can lay that out, you know?
Yeah, I just have to say I'm a little more empathetic. If you're eating something and your tummy hurts, I even have had people who have had extreme tummy hurting to the extent that they didn't eat at all and became anorectic. So I don't like the kind of belittling, just have your vegetables. I think that's caused a lot of harm in those who are susceptible. So not everyone has to avoid these things. I totally agree. But for those who do, why force them to go back to eating the fruits and vegetables?
I 100% agree that there's just an overwhelming amount of evidence that fiber is beneficial. Plants, vegetables, fruits, beneficial. There's randomized controlled trials. There's the observational data. I mean, you can't ignore that.
And I don't even like eating vegetables either. I just do it because I know it's good for me.
Well, interesting video from an evidence-based perspective that, again, now he's not being symmetrical in the application of his need for randomized controlled trials for the fiber. He was talking about cohort studies. But that aside, the reason they're concerned about it is that a carnivore diet, in many ways it's done, is very low in fiber. And there are a lot of people who do just fine without fiber in the short run. One might say it's the burden of proof is on those who say that it's harmful to prove it. In fact, that's where I am now in terms of the low-carb keto Atkins type diet. If you think it's bad, prove it. Because there are 20 years of research now, publications in a textbook called the ketogenic, the scientific basis of therapeutic carbohydrate restriction, that shows that a low-carb, even a keto level diet is fine. There's never been a clinical trial that said it was bad. So let's put that as symmetrical logic on. Show us a clinical trial that shows carnivore diets are bad. I hope you like this. If you do, please press like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, look for new content on Wednesdays and Fridays. If you enjoyed this video, consider joining our YouTube membership for early access and exclusive live Q&As with me. Just click the join button below or support us with a PayPal in the description.